Hey y'all, it's Dr. Know-It-All. I wanted to do a quick follow-up video based on the video that I did yesterday about Tesla sales rising 900%, 912% in Germany in January year over year, which is an amazing amount of growth. After posting that, my quote German office, Claudia, sent me another really excellent link. This is a tweet thread by Gunther, and I of course will put a link to this in the description. But I think this is really valuable for us to read over and to think about the consequences of what's going on right here. This thread is about the new UNECE regulation on driver control assistance systems, or DCAS, which opens the door to FSD Beta in Europe. So for people who don't know, of course, North America, Canada, and the United States specifically have access to Tesla's latest full self-driving beta, which is software that allows the car to mostly drive on its own. Like 99% of drives it can handle on its own. And obviously beta software, it still doesn't work 100% perfectly, but it is making, great leaps and strides. And of course, people who follow this stuff know all about like version 11.3 that's coming out hopefully soon, 2 weeks as always. Anyway, that software should then move it so that it's using the FSD beta stack on highways as well. And it's a really big deal that in the United States, Tesla is able to utilize beta software on the road. Obviously, they have to make sure it's very safe while they're doing that. And that was a huge reason why they did not roll out the software until they had it pretty well in hand to the 200,000, I think it's actually like 1 million drivers or something now. So it's a huge amount of drivers that have access to this software now. That is not the case in Europe at all. So Europe, you have the kind of 5-year-old stack is what I call it. It's what's currently being used on highways for people in the US and Canada as well, and in other countries. But in Europe, that is it's a significant reduction in the quality of your experience in Europe because you're not allowed to use this. Now, the EU has a lot of very tight regulations over all of this. But anyway, so that's the sort of setup for this whole thing. And there's this new, driver control assistance system, which is a necessary bill to be able to allow things like full self-driving beta to be utilized on city streets and on highways too as well. So that's the basic setup here. All right. So anyway, Gunther goes on to say the final draft should have been completed between February and May of 2022, which was, yes, last year, which is likely what Elon meant when he said this in December 22nd of 2021. We're aiming for a significant improvement for owners outside the US around March, depending on regulatory approvals. So that's approximately a year ago, like 11 months ago. He was hoping that people outside the US, meaning the EU, China is its own beast, and I don't want to touch that because they have data privacy issues and stuff, and I have no idea what's going on there. But the EU, is terms of obvious markets for Tesla's full self-driving software, the EU is number 2 on the list after North America. So anyway, you can see Elon was preparing for this. He was thinking that within the next couple of months in early 2022, this bill would be passed, and therefore that would allow for significant improvements for owners outside the US, in other words, in the EU. Okay, obviously, as Gunther said, this timeline apparently did not work out. After that, the final draft was supposed to be completed by May of 2023 or September of 2023. In other words, from a couple of months from now to, end of the third quarter, or sorry, beginning of the third quarter. Anyway, wait, end of the third quarter, yes. So anyway, so several months from what it is right now. Although this timeline is still possible, it has now been discarded. So I don't know exactly what that means. I guess it is conceptually possible still, but it won't happen. I guess that is the best way to look at that. The latest delay was proposed by the United Kingdom, which by its own right is really weird because they did Brexit, so they're not officially part of the EU anymore, and yet they still apparently have vetoing powers, which seems really strange to me. But anyway, there you have it. Anyway, the latest delay was proposed by the UK, and it was supported by the OICA/CLEPA, European Automakers Association, a lobby group. Seems like that always is the thing that gets in the way. Legacy Auto is scared, obviously. As a result, all participating countries agreed to implement this proposal. So here we have something that's happening out of fear. You've got a group of people, especially ones who are making money on the current state of the world. They're afraid of what's to come, and therefore they're like, whoa, 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 put the brakes on, don't make changes. We want things to stay the way they were so that we can feel more comfortable. So making a decision out of fear is almost never the best decision in the long term. It's the kind of thing you do when the tiger, you see the tiger in the woods, back in the day. You would be out there, digging or something like that, scrabbling around for whatever the vegetables you had, and you see a tiger coming out of the woods around you in the jungle, and you're like, fear, gotta run. And that's great. In the short term, fear can work really, really well. Not generally a long-term strategy that is going to work well. So I will just go ahead and say that right now. Doing anything out of fear is a very bad idea. Now, obviously, this is Gunter's take on it. I'm sure that there are lots and lots of official reasons why all this is happening. But anyway, that I believe is a pretty reasonable take on what's going on in Europe right now. Continuing on, now the final draft is expected to be ready in January of 2024, so that is a year from now. Goodness gracious. Only after that can it be submitted to the regulators and enacted as regulation. And then one more little point here. The regulators tend to make new regulations effective on January 1st. This would therefore push back a possible full self-driving approval date to January of 2025. And it was the EU flag and a snail emoji or whatever. An earlier approval may still be feasible, but not likely. And then someone asked Gunter about a source for this, and Gunter, put that on there. So you can go check that link if you want to go look at the source yourself. All right, so that's the situation for the EU. You can see that what they've done is they've effectively put the brakes on something that should have been approved 11 months ago, 12 months ago, somewhere in that range, something that should already be on the books and should have allowed Tesla and other companies to be able to begin to roll out beta programs to test out full self-driving, advanced full self-driving features in Europe, including the UK, even though it's not part of Europe. I don't understand that part. It's very confusing that they went through the whole Brexit thing and still are part of Europe in terms of regulations, but I don't understand. I don't even begin to understand the inner workings of all of that political stuff. So anyway, and I've also been told not to even mention that on my channel. So sorry, I didn't say anything about that. Anyway, so that's the circumstances that are going on. What are the consequences to the EU because of this? Well, there are a few consequences, and they are all not to the good. They are very negative consequences. So first of all, just from sort of an optics point of view, you want to be at the forefront of things like this, right? This is something that's going to happen. Whether or not you believe Tesla's going to solve it, whether or not you believe it's going to be in 2023 or 2027 or 2032 or something, this is going to happen. And when it happens, it's going to be massively disruptive. And so the bigger consequence than optics, you don't want to look like you're holding things back, right? But beyond that, the practical consequence beyond the optics consequence is that the economies of every country or every block of countries that adopts full self-driving and allows vehicles to operate on their own at first, and then to, of course, have fully autonomous robotaxi rides, even if it's just for parts of the country, even if it's just for individual cities at the beginning, and then it rolls out to more and more space over time. No matter what that is, every area that introduces this is going to see a reduction in effective labor costs, because these robotaxis, even if it's not a robotaxi at first, right? Even if I take my Model Y and I get to the point where the vehicle is able to drive me to work in the morning, that's a 20-minute commute to work and a 20-minute commute back from work. And if I really don't have to pay attention to the road, that's time I could spend filming a video, answering emails, going back to sleep, I don't know, eating some food, whatever that thing is. I could be more productive with my time for 40 minutes of the day if the vehicle is driving itself. And then that's to say nothing about robotaxis, because then I wouldn't even theoretically need a car to get back and forth to work, right? When that happens, I can just order up a car and it can drive me to work and then it leaves. So I don't have to pay for parking, because yes, I actually do have to pay for parking at my university, which is insanity, but that's the case. Most employees get parking comped, but not at a university. So there you go. But also, I don't have to finance the car. I don't have to put a down payment down. I don't have to have a garage for the car. I don't have to charge that vehicle. All of those things, that add up to somewhere around 72 to 75 cents per mile of vehicle ownership could be reduced by half or more. So if that's the case, I can get rid of at least one of our cars and just take a robotaxi to work, which not only then, of course, increases my productivity because I can do work in the car while I'm being commuted back and forth to work, but also reduces the cost of things that I have to own and finance and maintain in my life and my personal life. And if that happens, if we reduce that by half, let's say it goes from like $7,000 a year of owning a vehicle and paying for all of that stuff down to $3,500 a year, that's an extra $3,000+ that I just have to spend on other things. So that is a huge economic benefit. If you multiply that out by millions of people in your country or in your block of countries, that is money that people have to spend that they didn't have before because they had to put it into a relatively large fixed cost. So from a personal economic standpoint, people will have more money to spend on other things because they're not having to put it into their vehicles. But commercially, it's an even bigger deal. Think about trucking and things like that. If you can reduce the cost of trucking between electric vehicle trucks, which, already happened. Tesla has those, and other companies do as well. But if you could put ADAS systems or autonomous systems, not ADAS, but fully autonomous systems on those vehicles, and again, this is several years down the road. This isn't going to happen immediately. But if those trucks are able to drive on roads autonomously and you don't have to pay for human beings to drive the trucks, you can reduce the cost per mile of transporting goods as well. So that is the opposite end. Goods can cost less money, and or companies can make more profits because it doesn't cost them as much to transport goods around. And so the effect is that you have consumers who have more money and you have companies that are having to expend less money for shipping. And between those two things, economies can grow more quickly. And that's a place where the EU really, really doesn't want to fall behind. And that's why I said being afraid might be a good short-term strategy, but it is not a good long-term strategy. This over the next 12 months or something is not going to make that much difference. But as we start to stretch on to 2025 and 2027 and 2029. If we've learned anything in the past 12 or 18 months and coming up on this next year, it's that when AI actually takes off, when you get over the hump of things, we've seen this with DALL-E, with Imagine, with lots of other image generating things that went from the mid 20-teens to being like, yeah, okay, they work all right, they're not very good and stuff, to now, holy crap, they're working really well. And then they're going to be working, really, really well soon. And the same thing with language models like ChatGPT and Google's new, competition to that, Bard. Going to be doing a video on that soon, so stay tuned for that. But anyway, as you've seen with this stuff, it grows incredibly rapidly when you get over the hump of whatever technological barrier that is. Now, vehicles, on the other hand, autonomous driving requires really, really high bars, which is the reason why it hasn't taken off as much. But my prediction is when it happens, it's going to take over very fast. And if the EU doesn't have these regulations in place at that point, it's going to be very difficult for them to catch up to other countries that are allowing this. And that's going to put a really big damper on their economy. And that is going to be very, very troubling for the European Union as a whole. So my strong advice to the EU is to ignore the people who are telling you to be afraid and not make any changes, and try to fast track this, because you need to be set up for success in the future. Because when this disruption happens, it's going to happen like that. It's not going to happen over time. And if you're not riding that wave, you're going to get crushed by that wave. All right, I hope you enjoyed this video and found it fun and interesting and thought-provoking and maybe a little anger-inducing. If it did, if you're in the EU, write your politicians and tell them that they need to get on board with this stuff and move forward quickly. Anyway, if you did enjoy the episode, please do like it so other people can find it. And of course, consider subscribing for more of this kind of content. As always, a huge shout out to my patrons on Patreon. Thank you all so much for your support. You really do make this possible, and I truly do appreciate it. And of course, if you want to join the team, just check out the link in the description. And if you're interested in a whole bunch of really cool merch, check out our merch store. Link is in the description. We have TeslaBot t-shirts, the Tesla meme t-shirt, Success is a Possible Outcome, 4680 battery cells. All of that stuff is on t-shirts, mugs, tumblers, and on and on. So check it out. And finally, don't forget we are both Tesla and Amazon affiliates. If you look in the description, you can see how going shopping for a solar roof, a power wall, or anything on Amazon helps out the channel. In the meantime, I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.